Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. On this week's episode, I interviewed Steve Barbour. Steve, if you know him, he is the founder of Upstream Data, and he also invented the black box. If you've seen that, it's for good for mining. It mitigates the noise and also just a superb design to be able to have the airflow running and keep everything nice and cool while also mitigating the noise. So Upstream, you got to check them out, upstreamdata.ca. And they have a ton of stuff. You can buy your ASICs there. But yeah, it was great to have Steve on because he is big and obviously in the mining world. And with you guys knowing that I'm doing my own home mining, I had questions for him, but it was also fun because I got to learn about his, Bitcoin origin story, and how he got into it and how he got into the mining and everything like that. And then we even talked a little bit about like the Texas grid. If you've seen that in the news, how the Texas grid, is being stressed at the moment because of the heat, and so different Bitcoin miners are shutting down to allow that excess energy to go to homes. That, and then we talk about, hey, what happens whenever there are no more Bitcoin to be mined? How does the mining incentive continue to work in that direction? So I hope you guys enjoy this one. It was a blast, and we're also bringing on Upstream for my show as a sponsor. So I really appreciate them, and that kind of just happened organically after we did this interview. So shout out to Upstream, and I will be getting more info for you guys on their stuff in the future. But also shout out to the Bitbox02 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple and use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off and get yourself a Bitcoin hardware wallet. And you get that Bitbox, you put your keys and your coins off of the exchange, you take them off the exchange, put them on your wallet. Please do that. It is a matter of your own financial security. So do that. And also Movies Plus, mymoviesplus.com. Use the promo code SWAN and you'll get a year of Bitcoin for $20. And there's tons of Bitcoin content, and Hard Money is up there now. You can watch Hard Money every week on our app, on our website, wherever you want, on your Roku, on your Apple TV, on your Android streaming device, wherever it is, you can watch the show on the big screen. And we have tons of other content going up there. I just watched the Jordan Peterson doc, The Rise of Jordan Peterson. So yeah, it's not too bad for $20. You get a year of ad-free content, and we are adding stuff at a rapid pace. So yeah, promo code SWAN, and thanks to Swan Bitcoin for doing this cross promotion with us. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this. Reach out to me, Bitcoin Made Simple podcast at gmail.com if you have any questions or would like me to address anything in the show, and I will talk to you guys later. So I'll have to go to stash school, I guess, and figure out how to get a stash like the one that you have. But did you start the trend in Bitcoin to have people start getting stashes?
Well, I sure hope so. I don't really know. I don't know if I did. I certainly contributed to it. I've only seen the trend actually in Bitcoin mining. I haven't really seen the trend elsewhere. There's a lot of, in my circle, it sort of became a little meme between some people, but I can't say I've seen it catch on. But more recently, when Top Gun came out, it seems like everyone's getting stashes. So,
Yeah, I guess
so
start
now,
wearing short shorts again. And
well, now my friends that see me and haven't seen me in a while, and because I never used to have a mustache a couple years ago, they're like, "Oh, you're doing the Top Gun thing." I'm like, "No, man, I was doing this way before Top Gun." So
Top Gun's doing the Steve Barbour thing.
yeah. I guess
You started
I
the
like it.
trend.
I like it. We need more stashes in society.
Yeah.
Shaving is a sign of fiat oppression. So we must let our uh, our faces go untamed.
No, I agree. I agree. If, like I said beforehand, if I could grow a better beard, I'd probably have a beard like 3 times a year, and then like get tired of it and then shave it, and I'd mix it up because that's just how I am. But anyways, So Steve, tell me a little bit about your background in Bitcoin and how you got started. What brought you down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and brought you to where you are today?
Uh, I think really where I vaguely remember how I got into Bitcoin. I know it was through Reddit for sure. That was in 2016. And I mean, I'd heard about it before then, but I think I was fundamentally like, I recall back in, say, 2014, uh, and I was always interested in computer science. I was very close to doing computer engineering. I ended up doing mechanical engineering instead. And I remember actually, even if I go further back in engineering school, I started in 2011 studying. And I remember I had a cryptography, a professor that did electrical engineering. He taught us electrical engineering, but he's really into cryptography. And I'll never forget that class he did. He just did a little intro to cryptography for us, just like for our interest. And it was before we chose our disciplines. I ended up choosing mechanical, but I remember that class. I was intrigued by his discourse on cryptography, and this was 2011. So I'm sort of wondering. I always wondered after the fact. I was like, man, if I had my time back and I decided to go electrical and do the cryptography angle or computer engineering with cryptography sort of focus. Who knows? I might have got into Bitcoin super early and got super rich, but I never did. I went to do mechanical. And I know that when I started working in, when I was working and I was at a big oil company in Canada, at least, Husky Oil,
Mm-hmm.
I was very concerned about bureaucracy in the workplace. Like, it was a company, and this is common throughout, um, and this will all tie into Bitcoin here in a second, but
Mm-hmm.
bureaucracy in major corporations is common. It's a common theme. Like, you mean, obviously bureaucracy in the healthcare system. I just saw a meme the other day about how the administrative side of healthcare has gotten out of hand in terms of how the administrative side of healthcare has grown exponentially, while the physicians, like the actual
The actual medicine.
healthcare practitioners, hasn't grown near as much. And so that's a measure of bureaucracy. It's just the administrative overhead behind a business's function. And I noticed this at Husky when I was working at this big oil company, and we're all in our little cubicles like little rats, pushing paper, and it was really frustrating because like we weren't given any responsibility, given very little responsibility, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
very little control over decision making. And when and I sort of started studying, like I was looking up bureaucracy, like what is causing this? Like, why is this big company unable to make a simple decision on anything? And every decision had to be by committee. It would be like dozens of people. Every proposal I would bring to the table as a young engineer looking to improve, like, our facilities, would go through so many steps of approval, nothing would ever get done. So I started becoming fascinated with bureaucracy, like what is causing this? And I ended up going down this rabbit hole uh, and sort of figured it has to do with accountability and lack of accountability in corporations. And I kept going down the rabbit hole where I've started believing it was all rooted, like the fact that bureaucracy is so systemic throughout society, that it was rooted in money printing, because money printing is really what's this cheap capital from money printing is propping up these businesses. They basically, businesses don't have to be accountable because they just refinance, get bailed out. I mean, we could cite a million examples of companies that should not be around today, but they keep getting bailed out. And they're the most bureaucratic of all. Like, I mean, I'll just like some examples in Canada. Air Canada. Air Canada is basically, it's private or it's public company, but it's really a state-owned company. Uh, Almost an oligopoly in Canada here on the airline side. And that company, like Air Canada, has gone bankrupt like dozens of times, like in my lifetime. And it's the worst operating airline you'll ever see. It's so bureaucratic. It's so much overhead. It's so much administration. And that's just like a pristine example of this, how this bureaucracy is allowed to live through bailouts and money printing. So that got me onto money printing. I think that was how I got in down the path of hating money printing. And
Hmm.
then I became a gold bug. I was starting to like get into gold, finding out where I can buy gold and stack my own gold, like physical gold, because I was also reading about the history of gold confiscation and gold notes, etc. And then I think it was through that. I believe it was through my gold bug interests that all stem from bureaucracy, that I started seeing people talking about Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin, of course, is like gold 2.0. It's like gold on steroids. So I started getting into that.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that the bureaucracy end is what really drove you, because I think bureaucracy drives me nuts. And I think it drives a lot of us Bitcoiners nuts. I always reference Ron Swanson as who I identify with politically. If there's one political candidate, but I just remember the episode where he got brought into the uh, budget slashing meeting, where like he was, and they were like, could you help slash the government budgets and like all the bureaucracy, and it was just like the best day of his life. Because yeah, you look at all
Yeah.
these companies that are just stuffed with like so many, like a thinking about, even somebody said, what company was it? It was like one of the small like tech or social media companies had like 7,000 employees. I mean, not small, but like a decent, not Twitter, but somebody else, and they had 7,000 employees. And it's like, what in the world are 7,000 people doing at this company? Like, for something that could be managed, like, I mean, I know Netflix, I'm in the movie business as my background, and like, Netflix has like this massive debt and like overhead that's just through the roof. And it's like, it doesn't really take that much to run a streaming platform. Like, it could be done a little bit leaner, you know.
I bet it can. And I think a lot of companies start out. I mean, my company started really lean off my personal personal uh, savings, but I grew the company off almost exclusively off pure, like just lean operation and building and selling. And there that you can contrast that kind of startup entrepreneur growth path to what you commonly see, which is a group of people maybe pitching their startup and then getting financed, like getting some kind of initial capital injection. And it enables them to, and depending on how they end up, continuing to grow. And a lot of these companies, the whole goal is to keep refinancing, but it can immediately from day one sow lots of seeds of inefficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel like maybe through necessity, I've had to be very anti-bureaucratic at my company and very lean. But even now, like as we've been growing, it's really, I can see it, like it's really easy for this administrative creep, like this bureaucratic creep to come in, especially as we grow and we're like implementing more safety, like actual safety policy and other things. Like I could go on, but like I can see it already, like slowly growing in my company, and I'm trying to make sure I stamp it out everywhere I can before it becomes like too much of a problem, like too much
Mm-hmm.
of an overhead. Um,
Yeah, no, I hear you on that, because I mean, like, so what, I own a streaming platform now, and we're, growing, but uh it's like I still handle like HR, like parts of customer service, payroll, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you keep it lean, and I can see that too. I'm probably a little bit like, our company's probably a little bit younger than Upstream is, but like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I'm forecasting in the future, and I'm like, you know I could see, because immediately it's like, okay, you hire a couple people, and then it's like, well, I need, this person to do this, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess we can afford it, so let's do it. And that's where you get into trouble. So I'm trying to actively, you could probably write a class, or do a class on that for entrepreneurs, because um it's something that people don't really talk about. And so before we get into how like Upstream and everything got going, how do you get into mining?
well, that was pretty simple for me because once I got so in that time frame when I was getting into bureaucracy gold and then into Bitcoin. And by the time I got into Bitcoin in the way in the sense that not just hearing about it, but actually studying it. That was 2016. I started studying it in the summer, and I got interested in it for the I saw it as, the sound money, number one. That was immediately what caught my eye. And then as soon as it was very quick that I started being interested in mining, because mining is more up my alley. I mean, I'm a engineer by trade, so energy systems is effectively what the oil and gas industry is about, upstream oil production. And I was building and working in the upstream industry, producing oil wells and building facilities around producing and optimizing oil wells. And that's sort of my specialty, is optimizing oil wells. And so Bitcoin mining was like, oh, this is really interesting. It's very, like, mining Bitcoin is very comparable to producing an oil well. It's got a lot of similarities. And so that interests me first. Just the fact that it's sort of just something the kind of thing I like to learn about anyway. And then, immediately I just said, I just realized, like, well, Bitcoin mining actually solves the oil and gas issue of stranded natural gas. So that would be stranded and wasted natural gas, I should say. So wasted, especially, so like venting and flaring, excuse me, and then stranded gas that's just maybe not at the sufficient volume or a reliability or whatever to reach the market, like the stuff that's out there that's just sitting at upstream wells that are distributed.
So that's what got you. And forgive me if I don't think I realized this, but did you started so you Upstream was originally just oil and gas, and that was your own company, and then
No,
you started
no,
that. Okay.
no. Upstream Data was started specifically to build Bitcoin mines for upstream oil and gas companies.
Gotcha.
At the time, I still operate another company. It's really actually just an IP company. I designed stuff through that company and patent it and license it, but it's for downhole. It's for oil and gas tools. So I still do that, but that's what I was doing before Upstream. And then just saw that opportunity with Upstream too, because nobody was really building portable Bitcoin mines and natural gas generators and the whole packages for upstream oil and gas industry. So I started down that path because it didn't seem like anyone was serving that market.
Yeah. Well, so that's where I guess the black box origins came from, because I'll give you a little background on my mining. So I had ordered my miner before. I ordered it before the conference, and it was like on the way to my house while I was at the conference. And you were on like the open source stage or whatever with Marty Bent and them, and I popped in there, and you started talking about mining, and you said, well, you're like, however loud you think it is, it's louder, and however much heat you think it produces, it's hotter. And I was like, all right, well, I'm sure I'll be fine. And like, it can't be that loud. He's just saying that. And got home, got it all set up, and I plugged it in, and I was like, oh my God. It's the What's Miner M30S plus 110 terahash. And
nice. That's the best model on the market, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, Adam was the person that I was going back and forth with him and Hodl Tarantula, were like the people that said, if I'm going to get one, what should I get? And they both recommended that, so I figured if they know, then I should go with that. But they it was so loud that, like, I immediately, and now granted, our new house is decent size, so we're spread out, and I have it down in the boiler room, like tucked away in the back corner in the basement, and I could hear it. Like, the first night I went into my the master bedroom, and I could hear it. I was like, son of a bitch. Like, oh man, like, because I'm just thinking my wife's probably laying there, like, just like stewing, like, I can't believe he bought this machine. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And so she waited probably like 2 days where she didn't like say anything, but I could feel like her eyes like burning into the back of my head. And anytime, like, because anywhere in the house you could hear it. And and then so finally, I just after a couple of days I said, so it's louder than I thought it would be. And she was like, yeah. So since then, I've bumped it down to low power mode. And I'm kind of testing that out for noise, first of all. But then I think Rob actually said, Rob Warren, that he has a buddy that swears by that being a better return on ROI. So I'm kind of just mapping that out now to see what that looks like, and then I'm gonna kick it back up. But anyways, all that being said, the black box is like a lifesaver, and I don't think I can fit it in my basement, but I definitely will probably be a customer eventually. Um,
And
and
it's not meant for the basement. It's meant to be put outside. That's what
mm-hmm,
it's funny. I see people because you might know we also showed people how to build their own,
mm-hmm,
and you can build it out of like maybe less than like $150 of material,
mm-hmm,
just a bunch of sweat equity, and they work really well. The plywood version, but yeah, it's designed for outside because that was the whole intent. And I know not everyone can just park it outside, especially, it depends on your neighbor situation and your security situation. People don't want to put it outside, but I mean, that's sort of uh, like what we specialize in, what I specialize in personally. So I do all the like high level design of all of our stuff, and then me and my staff work together to fine tune it.
mm-hmm,
But that's what we do for a living is build Bitcoin mines for outdoor, very harsh conditions. And that was exactly what I had in mind for the black box. And then we actually just this week are launching our bigger versions, which is actually the original intent. We built the home one first because the market was so frothy for it. They wanted it. Um, but like the bigger versions are more like semi-industrial scale, like they're
mm-hmm,
20 to 40 kilowatt per box, like 6 to 12 miners per box. You could still run them in a small commercial space, but the whole point of them is to put them outside, not have like put them outside so it's safe, like in a steel box, quiet, so you can have it in like a commercial or even a residential area if you have enough power to power it, or industrial area as well. You don't have to cut apart your building and put fans in the building or build a custom structure on site, you
mm-hmm,
know, which is like, I think a lot of people are finding now, they're going to see, and they're seeing more and more over time, that you build these brick and mortar Bitcoin mining facilities, you put all this money into it, and then your power rates go up and it's no longer feasible, and you shut down and liquidate everything, but you burned and sunk all that money into your facility. That's been happening more and more as energy prices are going up. So we've always promoted, like, don't build a new brick and mortar facility, don't retrofit your building, just drop in a portable unit, and if things change and it's no longer feasible to run, you just sell the whole thing and you
mm-hmm.
recover most of your investment.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense because I'm actually in the process of setting up a couple I mean, they're business things that are coming together where I know some stranded gas, and I'm in Western Pennsylvania, so we have tons of stranded natural gas around us, and
Mhm.
yeah, so I got put in touch with people, and they're like, yeah, we got these wells, you could just plop in and plug in. So now I'm like in the process of the early stages of raising the capital. But yeah, it's just like we were looking at it, and it's like, yeah, no, I think we just contact Upstream, get some hash huts,
Mhm.
and plug them in. Like plop them there. Obviously put a fence around it, like stuff like that, and like some security. But yeah,
Yeah.
exactly like you said, because what if in 4 or 5 years, if we have to leave that spot or even less, like you can't take the building with you, but you can take the hash hut with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
And even we're bringing our new version of our hash hut to Miami at Mining Disrupt here at the end of the month. And we even just the black boxes worked so well because when I first like teased it back in August of last year, when it sort of organically became a thing from Twitter
there's
posting
probably a
and
lot of people
feedback.
like me with wives sitting there going, "Can you get this thing quieter?"
Yeah, yeah. So building something quiet was a big thing. The hash hut isn't like our hash huts aren't necessarily designed to be quiet, though we do have attachments that make them quiet. But actually, I was going to say the black box. One thing I wasn't sure about with how was it going to work? A, through the winter, and B, through the summer. Winter cold, winter snow,
Mm-hmm.
and summer heat. Those are two of the extremes that a Bitcoin mine has to build to bear. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people's designs do not bear it, because there's a lot of new entrants on the market and they simply don't work,
Mm-hmm.
especially in snow. Snow is, funny enough, everyone talks about heat, but snow is way worse to deal with than heat. Heat is just at worst downtime. Snow is catastrophic failure. So
Mm.
uh, I had my black box, the prototype, running all winter, and I made sure to do that and show people how it worked before we shipped them their units, because I was willing to refund everybody if we had any winter failures.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any winter failures after many snowfalls, so I felt comfortable like this is an actual good product for winter. And then the summer was still the unknown, so I wasn't really sure how these would work this summer. My own personal black box, I have S19 in it and a Wattsminer M30 in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I've learned about both products, like Bitmain's product and Wattsminer,
Mm-hmm.
the more I'm realizing that Wattsminer is better in every single way. Uh, I'm I am comfortable saying that it's better designed, but and just my own experience with it, not just with our company, but me personally at my house, that Wattsminer has never gone down for any reason. I've
Mm-hmm.
had the S19 go down a few times now. Uh, Sometimes I don't look at why. I just unplug it, plug it back in, it's back up and running. But
Mm-hmm.
generally, it's probably like a bit of a hot streak in town here, and it shuts down on temps and just idles forever. Whereas the Wattsminer just is like bulletproof; it just never stops.
Hmm.
And some of our customers have run these Wattsminers in really ridiculous conditions, like they put their black box in their shed and it's not ventilating very well, and it's running like 120-degree ambient, and the Watts miners are still churning along, no
Wow.
problem. It's crazy. Um, but I'm excited actually how well the black boxes work, because uh, it does a good job with sound attenuation, which is one of the goals. But the big thing was, without external fans, like or I call it active cooling, like active fans helping the miners, it's questionable how well it would run in hot weather. And
Mm-hmm.
they've run so well in hot weather. I actually ported over that idea to our hash huts. And we're not the first to do passive cooling by any means in like a container.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned from that, I ported over to our hash huts, which we're showing off in Miami at the end of July. And we have one running right now, and it's running quite well at quite a high power density. So we're pretty
Without
excited about it.
any without any supplemental fans for the.
No fans. It's just the ASICs all working to move their own, cool themselves. So it's all about sealing. You have to make sure it's all the hot and cold aisle is very well sealed,
Mm-hmm.
and that filtration and exhaust is very well breathable. Let's say, like
Mm-hmm.
they're not restricted on either filtration or discharge.
The Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. The Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Can I say that louder? Maybe I should say that louder, but we say the quiet parts out loud here on the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast network. And I recommend you get a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Why? Because I don't know. Have you looked around and seen Celsius and other exchanges and places going insolvent? Um, we've been saying for a long time that the exchanges are rehypothecating your Bitcoin, and you better believe it. So the only way to secure your wealth is to get a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple and use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. And I'm just telling you guys, for your own sake, please do it. It is the easiest, simplest way. The firmware is secure. It's been tested. It's open source, and it is a very nice looking. It looks like a little thumb drive. You plug it in. It's a touch screen, easy to use, so easy that even a caveman could do it to steal the Geico line. But honestly, if I can use it with these, so can you. So I strongly recommend the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple and use promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off.
In letter discharge.
Okay. So, I mean, and for people that haven't done it before, haven't like even seen a miner in person, like they move a lot of air. it's amazing how much air goes through there. And um yeah, so you have to, not choke it off is what I'm learning. What kind of advice do you have for someone that, so I have the one miner to start, and as I expand, I want to, like anything else has probably got to go outside. So obviously that's where I'd, be going the black box route. But I do want to keep one inside because I do want to heat my house with it. Um, so for noise mitigation, keeping it inside, because I looked at, Rob sent, that like his article on when he did, you had the whole plan laid out, and I've told people too when I mentioned that I'm considering building one, just I think it'd be fun. Like I like tinkering, you know what I mean? Like it's not that I don't want to buy one. It's like, oh, let me build one and see how horribly I do it, and then I'll go get one. but but it, you know,
And to be clear, like the most Bitcoiners are that way. Like they want to do it yourself. So we built the product. It's more for the industrial side, and
mm-hmm,
that's why we wanted to help people build their own, because
mm-hmm.
it's like there's no way we can
Yeah, it's
offer a
not
competitive
necessarily for
product.
the individual miner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it it definitely, like I started thinking about the plywood because I was telling people I think in my last podcast I was telling people that are getting into mining, I said it's actually the whole sheet, like you guys have the 8x4 sheet or whatever, and you have all the cuts laid out and everything, and I took that to Home Depot and I said, like, could you do these cuts? Because in theory I could do it at home, but like I do need it cut into pieces to get into my SUV. It's not an 8x4 is not even going to fit in my SUV. So like, could you do it? And they were like, yeah, we could do it. Like they're like, just give us the measurements and we'll cut it up for you. So I was like, that's a huge barrier there where people that maybe are afraid of it. I would cut it at home, but I was like, if they're going to do it for me, then I might as well. Um, but then I started wondering, so with like plywood and everything, what about the fire safety part of it? That was one of my concerns.
There is none.
There is no fire safety.
No, no. Like honestly, mining at home is that's one of the problems, is fire safety. Very much so, because it's not just the miner catching fire, it's the electrical cable. It's,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that are willing to be do-it-yourself miners are also tend to be do-it-yourself electricians.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of a problem there because some people cut corners, size the wrong cable, tie in the panel improperly. I mean, there's been
Mm-hmm.
people that have had fires at home, which is why the box we build is steel. So if you have a fire in the box, it's hopefully fully contained.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the do-it-yourself box is just for people like that's why like Rob, I think he aligned his with some stuff
Mm-hmm.
to try to make it a little bit fire resistant. I've seen some people spray it with stuff. I've seen like Adam, our other sales guy, he like coated his in this like black tar or something to keep it weatherproof. So we just showed people how to build one, and then what materials you use and how you change our design for it is up to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it absolutely, like our commercial product, we call it fire resistant, because it's really well contained. And listen, man, we've had a lot of ASICs catch fire in the field, like
Mm-hmm.
especially with these knockoff, like cheap Chinese PSUs that aren't OEM, that
Mm-hmm.
aftermarket stuff. We've had a lot of fires from those.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things like yeah, home mining, you do gotta, like if you're a father and some kid or mother and some kid out there is wanting to mine at home, that's great, but you better make sure someone looks over what they're planning on doing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have it like in the middle of the boiler, which is like, basically a cement room, and
yeah.
I have it on like a metal, like a shelf that would be in like the shop, just like a metal shelf. Because I was like,
Hmm.
if something happens here, it's not touching anything flammable. And
Yeah,
obviously the ASIC will shut down.
and that's what you should do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, like the black box was not meant to be indoors. That was one of the main reasons that the home mining product we built was for outdoors. We don't want our customers mining inside the house,
Mm-hmm.
because if our product has a fault, or our instructions are bad or whatever, or just the fact that these are high powered machines, and over time some cables degrade or whatever and they catch fire, if it's outdoors and separated from your home, well, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's still a big deal, but it's not as big a deal. So I
Mm-hmm.
did the same thing when I started mining in 2016. When I was preparing to start my company and I was learning about mining, I put my S9 on a steel shelf, very well segregated from anything that could catch fire, and I was very concerned about it. And my wife was extremely concerned about it. I was like, okay, like it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like nervous about it, and not just the noise, but the fire hazard. She's very nervous about that.
I guess you could install a sprinkler system too. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. You could go to no end, some kind of electronic fire suppression, but yeah.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I feel pretty confident because it's down where the furnace is, and you know, that's any concern unless I'm being stupid and like putting it on carpet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just, but the room itself is like 80 degrees, like at least. I haven't even like measured it, but it's pretty warm in there. Um, but it
You
doesn't get.
must be ventilating it though.
I'm actually not like. I mean, I guess maybe 90 at the most, but I think because I was curious. I'm like, I wonder if this is going to make my AC run like crazy, and it's not. But I think because let me just give you, you don't know what my house looks like, but the geography is that wall. It's like the back corner of the house, and right above it is a laundry room that is attached to the garage, and the garage is like a side garage, not underneath the house.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the heat is escaping out there.
It probably is. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's not going into the house, that's for sure. Like the laundry room floor is a little warm.
Mm.
Um, like it feels like a heated floor kind of. Um, but then yeah, the garage is pretty warm. Like I know it's a summertime, so the garage is gonna be warm, but it's warmer than I think it should be. And I have a feeling that's where it's going. So okay, so that yeah, definitely if you're gonna make a box, put it outside and
I
don't put it
think so.
indoors.
I think so, because it's not a huge advantage of what we designed for indoors. I mean, it does do a bit of sound attenuation,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do the do-it-yourself, you're not getting the fire safety. So unless you do it in a way that you built in that fire safety. But there's all kinds of ways people have done it for indoor use, like using tubs or old coolers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Ours is designed specifically to put outside is really the goal, because
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't want to build a product for mining inside for people's homes. It's just, to me, it's too, if it's one in a million that catches fire and kills a family, that's too many for me. So
Yeah.
we don't market it for indoors.
Yeah. No, that's smart. And yeah, if you're doing your mining in the house, unless you're doing it like I have it on a steel shelf that is not. It's pretty. I mean, it's in the middle of the room. I didn't even put it near anything because I was like, I don't want. And I have a fan. I actually have a regular like 18-inch fan behind it, just blowing air to try and keep it.
Circulate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to make it go. So all right. So now come winter time, uh, is it am I it, well, oh, before, so since building your own box around it, like I thought about with the shelf, I was like, maybe I could attach like sides to it and do that, but I mean it still makes me nervous. But I've heard that attaching inline fans helps mitigate the noise. Is it like a pretty significant?
I've seen people attach like automotive filters on in the intake of a miner. Uh, the duct fans alone, like inline duct fans, shouldn't really help much with the noise, unless you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the ones I've seen in the Home Mining Wizards Telegram group, that is going pretty strong. There's a lot of people that talk about what they do, and I've seen a lot of guys like run uh, ducts and other things, and then some other things to try to attenuate noise. But you're not going to get a lot of attenuation unless you really enclose it in something proper.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the challenge. I mean, but if you add, I mean, the black box was designed to attenuate it without requiring secondary fans.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different story if you're using secondary fans. You could do it all kinds of different ways. Um, but we wanted to do something with no fans, just fanless, make
Mm-hmm.
it really simple. And it also for us as a commercial manufacturer, like I didn't want to have to certify a package with like electrical certification. So I just built a box and it's up to the user to install it and use it as recommended.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, yeah, and inline fans, I see a lot of guys doing that. It'll help with noise because if you overcome if you put more CFM through it than what it would normally suck on its own, then its own fans will slow down. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why that was the only reason really why an inline fan would help.
Okay. And then as far as heating the house, my plan for the winter time is to basically get like an 8-inch duct that I can plug in, I can put right into my HVAC system, like
Mhm.
right after the blower. Um, and just have, I think Crypto Cloaks has like an attachment that you
Mining
can,
pants.
yeah, mining pants. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Well, one thing is like you just want to think that through in the sense that I don't know if you want to put it after the blower because that's the high pressure side of the system. You're gonna want to put it on the low pressure side. So you don't want unless you're putting an inline fan as well. You just don't want the computer pushing against the static pressure.
oh,
Is what
you mean the static pressure of the house?
Well, yeah, the discharge side of a blower will be higher pressure than the inlet side. So you wouldn't want to push it into the discharge side because you're going to be fighting that pressure.
Oh, so you if you put it on the intake, like right before it gets sucked down into
Yeah.
the heater, that'll be better because it's not fighting anything; it's getting pulled with the other air.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to review on your own setup, but like, you just got to be careful of that. You don't want to push it. You don't want you certainly don't want the computer itself pushing against a high static pressure.
Okay, all right. So that and it won't lose too much heat having to go down and through the blower. You think?
Uh, honestly, I can't really speak to your setup, but yeah, as long as it's not escaping somewhere, no, it shouldn't.
And have you heated your house with your miners?
No. Well, one, I'm in Alberta. We have natural gas heating,
Mm,
and it's very cheap. Our natural gas is very cheap, or I mean, it's not. It's getting more expensive, but it traditionally is very cheap. I find that if people have electrical heating, that's where it starts to make a lot more sense because you're already using electricity to heat your home, or maybe you have expensive heating oil or other expensive heating, and then it starts to make more sense. For me, it just wasn't a big economic use case for it. But then again, I'm not interested in recuperating the heat. I'm interested in rejecting the heat to atmosphere
mm-hmm.
and getting the box safely outside, sound outside, everything outside.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Uh,
that makes sense.
a guy could jerry rig it and have the heat plumb back in, or I could bring the box indoors or some way. Like for example, I'll probably bring the box into my garage in the winter and at
Mm-hmm.
least have a heated garage because it gets very cold in Alberta. So
Yeah, Alberta's. I'm a hockey player. I played hockey through college, so I know what a Canadian winter is like. And Alberta's no joke. That
no, no, it's not.
um okay, so yeah, I think I'm gonna, and I mean I'm pretty sure that this one miner is gonna significantly. We have electric heat, so I'm like it's gonna cut down on our electric bill. I'm positive because just the amount of heat that comes off of it. I'm like our house is probably gonna be pretty toasty.
If your heat's electric, it starts to make a ton of sense because all that heat you're using um, could be completely offset because you're paying that rate anyway, whether it's in a miner or in your resistor. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
might as well.
Yeah, I think for those is where you definitely, and that's why I like to see like, we're not interested right now anyway at building a product for heat recuperation. But there are a lot of people out there doing it. So like some people have some cool products they're trying to do, like off the shelf, you buy it, and instead of like you, the end user, having to figure out how to put it in your HVAC system or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a bolt on.
Yeah, it's just something that you can. I mean, why wouldn't you? I had Michael Schmid on that is doing the water heater, and
Yeah.
we were talking about it, saying like the business opportunity of being able to walk into a Lowe's or Home Depot and somebody's walking in to buy a water heater, and it's like, well, instead of buying this water heater, just you take this one, and you know you basically get a percentage of the hash, and
Hmm.
you get your water heated for free, plus it makes money, and
Yeah.
I said, I was like, you could break, this is how you would break Mark Cuban. So maybe this is something that you should do for Upstream, but invent something like that that's like off the shelf. You can get it and it's immediately profitable and it heats your house. Because you could go in and to like Shark Tank, pitch it, and then they'd be like, "This is unbelievable. How does it work?" And be like, "Well, it's a Bitcoin miner, and like, Mark's head would explode on
Yeah.
TV, and he'd
I
lose
would,
his
I
mind."
would, I know it won't be me doing that. Because I see people like the gentleman you just mentioned and others coming up with really good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's limited to their own time, and I only have so much time to do so much. So
Yeah.
I want to leave that market for people better suited and more capable of executing. I know that if I went on Shark Tank, though, I wouldn't accept any of their fiat. I would go
You
on
would,
there to
yep.
promote the product and leave, and I wouldn't do a deal with those guys. They're
Yeah.
they're they are sharks, right? So
Yep. Yeah, no, it's like I mean, with Kevin O'Leary when he was at the conference, he comes out and like the words he said were, with Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain. And I was like, oh God. Like, it's just amazing
yeah.
that they don't get it. Like they just, and they
Funny
benefit
thing
from the
is,
fiat. So
as a Canadian, I grew up watching Dragon's Den, which is a precursor to Shark Tank. It was Kevin O'Leary's baby. It's Shark Tank just for Canadians.
yeah.
It happened years before Shark Tank, so I really got to love Kevin O'Leary. Like I really do admire that guy. He's influenced me a lot in terms of just I always loved his blatant just tell he'd speak his mind no matter if
Yeah.
he's right or wrong. He'd just speak his mind about someone's idea and
And he says it like it is. Like,
says it
this
like
is
it
what,
is, and he helped so many people out not pursuing bad ideas, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. But he's certainly turned into some hell of a shit coiner when it comes to Bitcoin. So
yeah.
it's unfortunate to see that, but I still love that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because, I mean that like you kill your hero, you slay your heroes, and um, like Preston and I had a conversation about that because we're both from Pittsburgh, and Mark Cuban's from Pittsburgh, and so we were always like kind of proud of like, oh, that's our Pittsburgher out there, like making a big difference in the world, and then and we talked about it. We are like, it's kind of a shame, you just you see him, and then it was funny. Like 2 weeks later is whenever Preston had that space to see if Mark would come on, and it just like that was like huge, and it ended up becoming I don't think it ended up becoming the debate that it should have been, but that's neither here nor there, because other people got involved. Let's just say, other people that like to make splashy statements. Um, but okay, so a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. Uh, so we've seen the Texas grid situation, like just yesterday,
Hmm.
and I mean, I see you on Twitter with lots of opinions about these types of things.
Yeah,
Um,
trolling.
yeah, and so I want you to explain to other people because, like, I kind of got it, but my brother-in-law actually, he's an engineer. I forget. I think he's electrical engineer, and he works out in like northern Jersey, um, where they have like they're basically working with New York City's grid, and we are talking about all that kind of stuff, and he's into Bitcoin a little bit, and we are talking about the mining, yada yada. We are talking about the electricity, and like the load management. And he was basically explaining to me, he's like, that TV we're watching, we were watching the Stanley Cup final. He goes, we're watching the game on here right now. And he's like, those electrons are traveling at the speed of light. Like it's not getting stored anywhere. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think that's something that really helped me understand. So I guess explain to people what happened and why you think, the Texas grid situation here is a great example as to why Bitcoin mining helps future electrical problems.
Well, there's a lot to that because it's great and what's going on in Texas isn't great either.
Mm-hmm.
I've been critical of some of the stuff going on in Texas from a constructive point of view. Um, so Texas, obviously there's been a huge population influx into Texas. It just seems like an amazing place to live. I've been down there a few times. Incredible people, incredible economy. It just seems an amazing place to start a business. You've had all this influx from California and elsewhere going there in Austin and elsewhere. So Texas is seeing unprecedented demand on the grid. Their housing market has been booming. There's just been more and more load going up. But they've made the really dumb decision, and this is where I end up arguing a lot online with people. But they've been way over invested in wind power, number one, and solar power. And it's true that they have abundant wind and solar is actually a really good application in Texas. But the fact none of that changes the fact that it's terrible baseload generation. It's just crap, and it's not what you build grids. You don't build out a grid built on wind or solar. And we're seeing that all over the world where everyone switches to wind and solar, how much problems they're having, and their net average energy pricing is going up and up. So that's the problem with Texas. Number one is they've overinvested in unreliable power. They have all this wind power out in Western Texas, but most of the demand is in Central Eastern Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You have insane transmission losses in that power as well. That's just energy loss to heat through getting it from the source to the sink. So on the topic of Bitcoin mining in Texas, there's a lot of nuance here. It's overall a net good for sure. There's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You've had so many people flock to Texas more than anywhere else. If anything, it's been such a huge narrative over the last 2 years. And I think that's all coming to a head now because you have an insane amount of demand trying to get into that market. They've had an insane amount of applications to get big power purchase agreements on the grid. Like for everyone they approve, there's a dozen they reject or more. So just that demand is already, you'd have to think, it's not going to be the greatest opportunity once all that gets set up because you're going to be in deep competition locally. But there's a lot to unpack here because a lot of people are talking about, Bitcoin mining is a great way to, this is something you'll see commonly, which is completely wrong, but they'll say it's good for renewables. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not good for renewables. It doesn't do anything for renewables aside from in terms of promoting new renewables. All it does is it takes away the sum of the curtailed energy produced by renewables. I actually wrote 2 articles on that. So I talk about that whole LARP that it doesn't really fix renewables. The problem with renewables, and I'm specifically talking about wind and solar, is they're unreliable, and Bitcoin doesn't fix unreliable generation.
Mm-hmm.
What it does do is all the overbuilt capacity that Texas has done with wind and solar, because you have to overbuild wind and solar to have any chance of those farms, those wind and solar farms being useful. You have to overbuild it. So Bitcoin does buy some of the energy that they produce that's normally curtailed in times where demand is low. Bitcoin will
Mm-hmm.
eat it up, but it doesn't really incentivize new wind and solar generation because new wind and solar generation is a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
As they're seeing in Texas this week, they've approached having to shut having strategic brownouts or blackouts. All the Bitcoin miners, all the major ones, have had to shut off all their mines to give their consumption to the rest of the grid. And unfortunately, I mean, they're all really working hard to promote it as Bitcoin miners are good for the grid. But I think what's going to happen over time is people are going to see it differently. They're going to see it as competing with their own usage of energy. Just the general population, they're not going to know the
Mm-hmm.
nuance, and it's going to be the anti-Bitcoiners or the fiat maxis, who I call them, are going to promote, say that it's a net, more carbon produced, which they're going to say that's bad. And they're going to say, they're driving up prices, and they might not be, they might actually be driving down prices because of their allowing these generating stations to sell more power.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality doesn't have to be the narrative. That's what we've seen across the board in, like, I
In
always relate it
life.
to oil and gas in life. And I always relate it to oil and gas because uh, it's very, a lot of the narratives are completely subjective and false, and not close to reality. But reality, the public doesn't care.
Mm-mm.
It's just whatever the story is told the loudest and the broadest is what they care
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, that was eye opening for me. I mean, it's funny that Bitcoin has done this to me, but one of the things it did was open my eyes to, I think, the farce that CO2 emissions are bad. Um, because the people will roll their eyes, but it's of all people. Um, when I heard Alex Jones talking about fossil fuels on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about, like, well, like the plants were bigger when the dinosaurs were around. It was their own, like, they produced the CO2, blah, blah. And I just never thought about it that way. And I was like, wait a minute. So CO2 is what helps plants grow.
Yeah.
And we're trying to limit that. And all of a sudden the idea, it just started to make sense to me. I was like, oh, they want, because humans are carbon beings, we're made of carbon, and they want carbon neutral or carbon negative. And I was like, oh, we are the carbon they want to reduce. It's not.
Yeah, which was the title of the panel I was on in Miami,
Oh,
actually.
is that what it was?
We are the carbon they want to reduce. Yeah.
No way. That's
So
hilarious.
that's the big scam. Like, that's the thing that many people know, but very few people will talk about, because it's borderline taboo to talk about it now. Is that carbon accounting is the scam. Like, there's nothing wrong. Like, carbon itself, it's sort of set up to be a bias and subjective tax on fossil fuels, which are the most profitable resource and industry on the planet. Nothing, I mean, there's no industry that, when the prices are good, makes more money than the oil and gas industry. Like, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, and in terms of feeding families and jobs, and it's unreal. Like, I've been through, personally, in my professional career, one major bull run in the oil and gas market, and you will not see any other industry generate that wealth that you see in those markets. Um, so the carbon thing is a scam, through and through. It's it's a cult as well.
Yeah.
It's like, because the thing is, and I think a lot of people made a lot of mistakes over the years where, like, I'm very much anti carbon accounting. I'm anti ESG. I'm anti using carbon as a qualifier for what we should be doing in business and in
Mm-hmm.
life. I'm very against it. But you can argue against it without going to the place where you sort of get ignored, and that's like talking about, like, being a climate change denier.
Mm-hmm.
Right, as soon as you deny climate change in this day and age, you're just going to get ignored. Like, doesn't matter what points you make. And you don't have to deny climate change. That's the thing. And that's one mistake I see a lot of people who are criticizing this carbon movement and ESG movement, et cetera, and everything related to it. One mistake they make is to just, they start with denying climate change. And that's I think the wrong path to go, because you immediately get ignored. And you might actually be right. You might be wrong. I mean, I don't know the actual truth of how impactful humanity itself has been on climate change. I obviously, we've had some impact. Like, we're terraforming the land,
Mm-hmm.
we're cutting forests down, we're doing all kinds of things, we're overfishing, et cetera, et cetera. We have some impact on the climate. So, like, that shouldn't even be debated. So that's one problem I see, is people denying it. Instead, we should just be talking about what's actually matters, and carbon doesn't matter as much as resource waste matters. Like, so, back in the day, they well, for example, there was that, I saw that document. I like to use this example, but shark fin soup, long line fishing. Shark fin soup is a delicacy in Asia. They go get these sharks and on the boat cut their fins off, waste the rest of the carcass, but they also kill like hundreds of other animals in the process. It's very controversial. Those are the things that humanity could all be working towards stopping. And that's called, I just call that resource waste. You're wasting resources. In my industry, where we promote Bitcoin mining for methane reduction, so venting natural gas, which is a natural part of oil production, we can help reduce methane emissions reduction and therefore carbon emissions reduction. And we do, of course, because our customers are concerned about carbon, so we do promote that we're reducing your carbon footprint. But that's not the first thing we promote. The first thing we promote is we're going to help you make more oil. We're going to help you conserve more of the energy that's in the ground by not wasting it. That's the two things that actually matter. The emissions footprint is like minor compared to that. So we don't go out and only talk about carbon emissions, even though that's what the market wants to hear. It's like, we're conserving the resource with you. We're helping you produce more of the resource for you, your own profits, and the community's well-being and job creation and whatnot. So unfortunately, yeah, the carbon, I just call it the carbon cult, where there's a cult out there, and it's very difficult to navigate. But as you started, like, carbon's not even a measure of pollution. That's the fucked up thing. Like, it's every human being, myself included, and everyone in the oil patch and the coal industry, the people that are considered the evil people, like generating fossil fuels, we all care about not wasting stuff. Like, we're no different than the greenest environmentalist at Greenpeace. Nobody wants to waste anything. The difference is we just realize that we understand that fossil fuels are actually a foundational aspect of our society and civilization. So we want to go promote and do that as efficiently as possible. And so what I'm hoping, like, my narrative has always been, I ridicule and mock the carbon cultists, and I promote, I just promote, like, we should be concerned about resource efficiency. Number one, that should be using what we have efficiently, is
and not wasting, eliminating waste. Yeah. Okay, that's great. And I couldn't agree with that more, because it kind of, if you're maximizing your resources, you're definitely minimizing the all the other problems that it causes. Okay, so last question I have for you, because I know we got to run, but I've seen you mention this before. So what happens in 2140 when there are no more new Bitcoin to be minted, and Bitcoin miners are no longer getting a block reward? I mean, there is a reward for transaction fees, so I guess, but like, would it be the subsidy that you're not getting anymore once the Bitcoin have capped? Anyways, everybody knows what I'm talking about. So what happens then? Because I've seen you have some opinions on that.
The short answer is nothing. Literally nothing happens. Like, in fact, I mean, there's a lot of layers to that topic. So, like, at high level, you get a lot of questions from newbies to Bitcoin. Well, what happens when all the Bitcoins run out? Like, the new mined Bitcoins run out? Well, the answer is nothing. Like, mining doesn't end. It goes on forever, because miners are looking for transaction fees.
So at that
and
point,
that's how it transitions from new Bitcoin. You start with zero network and zero transactions and all new coins. And over time, it exponentially drops in new coins to fee market. People competing for block space, sending Bitcoin transactions, paying fees to get them sent and confirmed by miners. And the miners then, of course, absorb or earn that fee, and that pays for their energy use, and et cetera. So that transition's already happening. We're down to 6.25 Bitcoin per block. We're going down to 3.125 coins in 2 years from now. Fees are only averaging like maybe 0.2 Bitcoin per block or something small, or per day. I can't remember what it is, per block, I think.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah, I
about
think it's
right.
per block. And
Or not point
so,
two, but it's like, I think like 0.02 or something like that.
yeah, I forget what it is, to be honest, right now.
I'm just going off of
It,
what I see on Slush Pool. So yeah,
I have a chart actually of what it is, but I don't have it open right now. But
but it is going up.
it's
Yeah.
transitioning up, and that conversation's interesting because you could have a whole podcast talking about how what happens, what happens, what doesn't happen, and all the people concerned about, fee market and what happens when you're on a pure fee market. And there's a whole group of people that believe or are worried about and are fudding and are trying to scare people about Bitcoin becoming unstable and unusable on a fee market, and that a subsidy, like new coins, like call it in the inflation rate of Bitcoin, needs to be permanent. And that's an interesting debate. Interesting, but I think it's very much settled already. But of course, there's going to be people continuing to just question, but as they should. But yeah, the short answer is nothing happens. Mining goes on forever. It'll never end. In fact, like Bitcoin would have to die in some very catastrophic way for mining to stop. Like it'll literally never end, because even at this point, it'll just carry on as a meme.
Yeah.
Like even if it doesn't grow, if it shrinks, it'll just become a meme and people will still be mining, because you'll never stop blocks from being found. They'll be found constantly forever.
There will be value in finding that. And so you think it would be more like big banks once it's let's just say 2140s here, and you have layer 2, layer 3, all these things on top, like base chain transactions are going to be much bigger, like movements, because it's going to be like settlements between banks kind of, and like so fees will be pretty high. Like you'll be getting in fiat terms pretty significant revenue.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of just the whole like concern about the fee market is whether or not the fees sustain mining and honest mining, so people not like attacking the network. And that's an interesting discussion. But generally, yeah, like we've seen, Bitcoin fees have steadily grown in Bitcoin terms, like the amount of Bitcoin average fees per block. Although people are worried that it's not high enough for some reason, which makes no sense. But from the value perspective, I'm pure, not just like unit value of like how many Bitcoin per block, but actually what's the value of that Bitcoin per block in fees. That's gone like effectively exponential growth, and it's showing no signs of stopping. So there's a lot of reasons to believe, at least in my opinion, that the entire thing is fully self-regulating, and there's no concern for instability or anything in the future. And that's personally how my I'm investing my business towards Bitcoin only. Personally, I'm Bitcoin only. I'm a maximalist in that sense. So I have zero concerns over it. So at
Yeah.
least my actions speak louder than anything else, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's reassuring because I generally feel the same way. But then you start seeing people pipe up the other way, and it it'll it's all going to work out. We just have to keep fighting for it and make sure it goes in the right direction. But yeah, I think it's pretty much settled at this point. And it'd be an interesting, maybe someday I'll have to get like you and like do a panel with a couple people and just have a huge conversation about what happens in 2140. But we'll leave that for another
It's not going
time.
to be like, the thing is though, it's going to, whatever happens, say something happens, like what happens in 2140. Well, it's not going to happen in 2140. It would happen way before that,
Yeah.
because for the last several eras of block, for every 4 years, call it an era or whatever, for of a block reward, it's going to happen way sooner. The block reward drops below the current average fee level within like 12 years from now.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's
So
actually going to happen within, you could say, 20 to 30 years. It's going to happen well within our lifetimes,
wow.
like the fee market becoming the dominant market.
Interesting.
So we don't have to, luckily we don't have to wait that long. We're going to find out, it might take a few more decades or it might
But
be sooner. It's hard to say.
cool. Well, that's a podcast in and of itself because that's a huge topic. But I wanted to at least get your opinion on it. So I appreciate your time for coming on. Tell people where they can check you out and and learn more about your hash huts and your because I ever since I announced I started doing Bitcoin, I had like hundreds of people message me and say I want to hear more of your updates. So like I'm kind of making this a Bitcoin mining podcast. I'm not trying to just be Bitcoin mining, but I know there's a lot of people that are probably listening and interested in mining. So where can they learn more about you guys?
Yeah, well, my company's called Upstream Data. We basically build Bitcoin mines for every application. So we don't do every kind of tech, though. We don't do like immersion. We just do air cooled, and we're coming out with water cooled right away. But
Mm,
we do it at every scale, like whether it's home mining or massive mega mines. So in that sense, any listener who cares about mining, we'd have something for them. So that's good news. But we're a Canadian company, so our website's www.upstreamdata.ca. And personally, you can find me shit posting all the time on Twitter. I'm at SG Barbour, Barbour, and our company is Upstream Data Inc. on Twitter as well.
awesome. Well, Steve, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Yeah, anytime. Let me know. Thank you.
Thanks again to Steve for coming on, and thanks again to Shift Crypto and their Bitbox O2 hardware wallet for sponsoring the show. I will talk to you guys next time.